You know that meme where it's like, yes, go girl, give us nothing. That was this book in a nutshell for me. It gave me nothing. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Just another struggling writer. The Beleaguered Authors one-stop shop for commiseration and hopefully inspiration. My name is Carrie Scher, and I am just another struggling writer. Well, today is the start of another reading vlog, and last week I didn't get nearly as much reading done as I wanted, but I still managed to finish a book in 1 week. So an improvement over the last couple of weeks. I think the book before that took me like 3 weeks to finish. So hoping to gradually get back to my reading because I am seriously behind on my reading goal. I think I am now 6 books behind. I'm trying to get to 75 by the end of the year with the goal of reading 6 books a month. I haven't done 6 books a month since March. I think I did 5 in March too. So I'm really behind. And so I need to increase my reading output. Whether or not that happens, we'll have to see. So for my physical book this read, it is yet again Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I think I've mentioned this now 3 weeks in a row, but I am really going to focus on this week. I'm going to put an emphasis on reading a physical book when I'm at home and reading my ebook when I'm not at home. So that way I can balance the two. I've mentioned this a dozen times already. You know what it's about. It's a reread. I'm rereading it because I read it like 5 or 6 years ago and I want to refamiliarize myself with the story before I pick up the sequel. For my ebook, I had to get a little bit creative because most of my TBR books this month were physical reads. So I went back to my library and I found an ebook that I have kind of had on my radar for a while, and that is What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. This is described as The Mummy meets Death on the Nile, and if those comps don't get you excited, I don't know what will. The Mummy is one of my favorite movies ever. And of course, everyone knows Death on the Nile. And this is like a young adult fantasy twist on those two things. And so I am so excited. Young adult doesn't normally appeal to me. I prefer the like deeper storytelling that we tend to get with an adult audience book. But this premise is just too good. I can't wait to get into it. And then lastly, similar to Assassin's Apprentice, I've mentioned this a dozen times. It is my audiobook, The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. This might take me like another 2 months to finish reading because I just don't listen to audiobooks very often, and this is quite a long one. Even at 1.5 times speed, it's something like 13 hours, and I don't have the time. I just don't have the time or energy or attention span to listen to an audiobook. I have audio processing issues, which means I can only pay attention to audiobooks in very specific situations. And I don't have a commute anymore, so that eliminates a big chunk of time where I used to get a lot of audio reading done. I do anticipate finally making some progress towards this. Hopefully I'll finally make some more progress in The Blade Itself, but we shall see. So those are the 3 books I am going to be hopefully making some progress in this week, and I will update you tomorrow when I have gotten a little bit further in one or all 3 of them. Hello everyone, it is now Monday evening and I've got a quick reading update for you. Unfortunately, it was not a great reading day, but I did read the rest of the 2nd chapter of Assassin's Apprentice, and so I am now up to about the 10% mark, and it is normally at about here that I would have thoughts and feelings to kind of enumerate for you, but I've already read this, so my thoughts and feelings are, it just feels like a nice warm hug to be reading this book again, because Jeez, I am just a mess today. Anyway, I just love this book. I love the characters. I love the journey. I love the writing. It just feels like coming back to a place that I didn't realize I had missed so much, especially since I've only read this book once and it was quite a long time ago, and then I didn't read anything else from the series or from the author at all. But that's why I'm doing this, is to kind of give myself a refresher so I can go on and continue. As I finished up the 2nd chapter, as you may know, there's an epigraph at the beginning of each one, and there was a line in the epigraph of the 3rd chapter that actually stopped me from reading because I wanted to share it with you and I didn't want to move on from that moment. So it says, All events, no matter how earth-shaking or bizarre, are diluted within moments of their occurrence by the continuance of the necessary routines of day-to-day living. That's actually not part of the epigraph at all. It's just part of the beginning of the third chapter. But anyway, it just feels really poignant for this moment in history that we Americans are facing. So if you ever feel like overwhelmed by what we're experiencing and wondering how you're supposed to go on and live your day-to-day life while coping with all of these world-changing events, it's okay. It's okay to set it aside and continue living, because we have to. We have to continue living. We can't just not get our kids up and take them to school in the morning, or we can't just not, wash our laundry or fix dinner or, get up and go to work. We have to. And so if there are moments where you're feeling overwhelmed by the moment, it's okay to take a step back and disengage from whatever it is that's overwhelming you and just focus on the little things. So in lieu of any deeper reading updates, I'll leave you with that, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Hello, everyone. It is time for a quick reading update. Today, I read the first chapter, I think it was the prologue, of What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez, and I decided to do a soft DNF. I just don't feel like it's the right time for me to pick up this book. I wasn't really vibing with the writing style, and then I also realized it being a YA and a historical fantasy after I just read a historical fantasy, I just don't know if it's a good idea right now. I have read several kind of mid books recently, and I'm just really, really kind of wary of triggering another reading slump. My current reading habit is in a very fragile place right now because of the very long reading slump that preceded it. So I decided that I'm going to soft DNF it and then come back to it later, because I do really like the concept, and I really do. I am interested in this book, and so it's one of those where I'm like, I'm not feeling very forgiving now, but I may later. And so I returned it. I got it from the library. I returned it, and then I went back to the library and looked over what they had available, and to my surprise, A Tempest of Tea was immediately available, and so I picked that up. And while this is tagged as a YA, I have read the first 10%, and I can say I am liking it quite a bit more than I anticipated, to be honest with you, especially since it has some similar vibes to Six of Crows. And one of my biggest complaints of Six of Crows is that the main character felt too old for his age, felt too accomplished in a world where that is unusual, and then like adding in the fact that everyone else around him was also the same age and also just as accomplished and scary and competent and good at what they're doing. I just didn't love that. It made their ages feel cosmetic. And in this book, the main character kind of has a similar vibe of being a young girl who has been wronged by the world and has honed herself into a super competent, kind of scary underworld figure. But I kind of feel it a little bit more than I did with Kaz in Six of Crows. I don't know why or how to explain it, but I sort of buy it a little bit more. That may change. I'm only 10% of the way in. It could be that as the story goes on, I get a little weary of that trope. But A Tempest of Tea is about a young woman who runs a tea shop by day and a blood house by night, a blood house being a place for vampires to come and feed safely and for a price, rather than risk exposing themselves by feeding on someone outside and, potentially getting themselves in a position to be hunted down. And that's really all I know so far. I've read the first 4 chapters. I'm about 50 pages in, so I don't really have much other than that. I will say that it's a very short read. It's less than 350 pages. So what I would really like to do is get in bed and read a little bit more tonight and then finish it tomorrow. Whether that's going to occur, I'm not too sure, but that is my goal. So really pleased both with finding a book to replace the one that I DNF'd, and also one that seems like it'll be pretty easy to finish, and that I'm actually kind of liking it, which is a little, again, not quite what I expected given my history with Six of Crows. That is my only reading update for you today. I will get back with you tomorrow and let you know how it goes. Okay, so I only have a few minutes, so this is going to be quick, but I've read a little bit more of A Tempest of Tea, and while I thought the beginning was very, very strong, I am now at 30%, and things have kind of taken a turn for me for the worst. We have now met a third hyper-skilled teenager, and that's kind of where I draw my line, and it is really crossing really strongly into Six of Crows territory now, where you've got a group of hyper-skilled teenagers pulling off a impossible heist over the expertise of adults who in theory would be just as skilled. And as in Six of Crows, there are ways to explain that. Sure, you could explain that Kaz is a genius, just like you can explain that Arthi in A Tempest of Tea is a genius. You can explain that Arthi has taught a lot of her ways to Jin, her blood brother, in the same way that you could kind of say that Kaz kind of passed on some of his ways to Jasper. And then you've got other characters like Inej in Six of Crows, where yes, you could explain that she is unusually skilled because of her background and just because of her innate talent. And yes, you could explain that Nina is unusually skilled because of her role as a Grisha. She doesn't, there just aren't that many and whatever. But it just becomes a little bit too much when all paired together in a world where it doesn't make sense that there aren't adults that are just as skilled. And in theory, in the Six of Crows universe, there are, and they're competing against them, whatever. I do really have I really do struggle with the idea that there are just these groups of hyper-skilled teenagers that all just happen to know each other and happen to be working together. And in A Tempest of Tea, we just met a young woman who is a forger, and quite a skilled forger at that. I just don't believe it, and this book doesn't even really make me make an attempt, at least so far, to make me believe it. It just says it. She is a good forger. And like her background suggests that would be the opposite, that she just sort of fell into it and is just it's just like self-taught, and she's been only doing it for a couple of years. I really have a hard time believing that that is the most skilled forger that this group can find. And yes, there is an element of, well, she's pretty and one of the characters likes her. Okay, but really, is that you're putting your lives on the line? That's really what you're going to trust it to? And again, it's just being told to us. There's no, at least with Inej, there was an element of showing us how skilled she was and the positions that she was in. This has not yet done that. She's had a couple of POV chapters already, and we have not been shown that she's actually skilled. In fact, she got caught and is now paying for, not being as skilled as she thought. And so it just, when your objective is to pull off an impossible heist, you just have to go with who is the most skilled, not and not just the one that's pretty. I don't know. It's just, I know this is a YA, and I know that's intentional that for all the characters, especially all the POV characters, to be teenagers, and that in these kinds of books, they all are very, very good at what they do, but I don't love it. I'm sorry. This is why I don't read YA. While I thought that it started off really strong, and I did like Arthi, and I was able to kind of excuse that she was so good at what she does at such a young age as her being a genius. And I do even think that there's a level of emotional stunting, or you could tell that she's not quite an adult because of where she's at emotionally. So I think that is very smartly played off. When it becomes a group of teenagers, and they're not all teenagers, they've just contacted an adult to join their group. But when they're all teenagers, I struggle. It just beggars belief. I am an adult and I have to believe it. And unfortunately, in these kinds of books, I don't. I'm at 30%. I'm about to go get a bunch more reading done while I'm out and about, and I will hopefully have another update for you later tonight. Hello, everyone. It is now Saturday, and I have an update for you. Last night, I finished A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal, and regretfully, I hated it. I hated it so much. There's so much I could say, and if y'all want, I can do a full rant review on it, but this book was in no way for me. I can imagine there is an audience for it that are probably along the lines of the Sarah J. Maas, Jennifer Armentrout vein. I am not in that pipeline, and this particular book, I just hated it. It was so bad. I'm so sorry. It was so bad. It was 338 pages, and the plot, by and large, just served as a paper-thin vehicle to get the characters in the same room together so that they could make moon eyes at each other. This is a heist story, and I think the idea was to go for a Six of Crows sort of feel. The main character, Earthy, definitely has parallels to Kaz Brecker. But the problem is, at least the plot in Six of Crows made sense to me, and it actually drove the story. What drove the story in A Tempest of Tea was all of the characters were hot for each other and wanted to flirt and make moon eyes, and that was 75% of this book, and it wasn't interesting. None of the romances were appealing. There was a love triangle. I will say the love triangle wasn't super obvious to me which way it was going to go, so I guess kudos to that. And there were elements of Hafsa writing that I wanted to like. I highlighted a whole bunch of stuff, just really poignant lines, but it started to feel towards the end that she was writing in such a way to set herself up to deliver such a line. And like I said, most of this book is just interactions between characters who want to fuck, and I don't care. I wanted the plot, and there just wasn't one, and it was so bad. And the reveal at the end, the twist at the end was so bad, just bad. Badly thought through, badly executed, cliche as shit, and it carried absolutely no narrative weight up until that point, and didn't really seem to carry much narrative weight after. Bad. It was just bad. The only thing in this book's favor, which is also a point against it, was that it's so short. So it was a good thing because I was able to get through it really quickly. I mean, after the first 30%, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to pick up this book again, but it was so short. So I was like, oh, I can finish this really quickly if I want to. Problem is I never wanted to. But at the same time, I have to wonder what this book looked like before editing. Was this just an editing nightmare? What was the story before it got cut down to this? Because there's nothing in it. You know that meme where it's like, yes, go girl, give us nothing. That was this book in a nutshell for me. It gave me nothing. The characters, Arthi in particular, at the very beginning, I felt like we were on a good trajectory to get her established and kind of get a sense of her. But that all happens in the first 15%, and then after that, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't go into any kind of detail about how she built herself up to have this sort of network. There are lots of scenes of her calling and all these favors she earned, but it doesn't really show us how she maneuvered this system and how she plays the system to work in her favor. It's all just told to us. And it's just it was so lazy writing, lazy character work. The Flick's POV, which is the third character, was absolutely pointless. Did absolutely nothing for the story, added no value whatsoever. I mean, with a little bit of reworking, you could have just folded her chapters into Jin's chapters and it would be fine. Absolutely nothing of value there. And the romance between Jin and Flick was so boring, so plain and dry. The reveal at the end, the way that the plot built up, which wasn't much. If you think of a plot as a ladder and you're ascending up to a crescendo, the plot in this book was more like a step ladder. It had 2 or 3 steps. She broke up the book into 3 acts. Act 1 was 200 pages, and then acts 2 and 3 were 60 pages each. And it's just it doesn't make any sense how this book was structured. The plot, again, just there was nothing to it. Romances were boring. The characters, one of Arthi's love interests, both of them really, but they just do absolutely nothing to get you invested in it. Absolutely nothing. I just don't get it. Anyway, I'm not going to go on anymore. You get the picture. I hated it. I'm giving this 1.5 stars because I do feel like there's might be elements of Hafsa Faisal's writing that I like. But again, it just got to the point where the rest of the narration, the rest of the writing, the rest of the story was so empty that it started to feel more like she had a good line in her head and she just wrote up to get herself into a place where she could deliver it, and that kind of sucked some of the enjoyment out of it for me as well. So 1.5 stars. I hated it. If you like extremely bare bones plot and romance and characters making moon eyes at each other, then fine, sure, this might be for you. Not for me. Oh my god, not for me. I'm gonna spend the rest of my weekend trying to finish Assassin's Apprentice. I read another chapter last night, but this is a lot denser than A Tempest of Tea was. Oh, that was the other thing about A Tempest of Tea. It name drops the title within like the first 40 pages. I hate that. I hate it. Anyway, so I'm going to try and finish Assassin's Apprentice this weekend. I doubt it, honestly. I am watching the Olympics and trying to get some writing done. And I'm going to hang out with my partner this evening. We've got a nerd date planned. So that might not happen this weekend, but at least I got one book finished, even if I hated it. Oh my gosh. I just got out of a reading slump. I don't want to do this again. I'll check in with you tomorrow and let you know how I got on with Assassin's Apprentice. Hey y'all, just checking in to wrap up this reading vlog. It is now Sunday afternoon, and I did get a little bit more reading done on Assassin's Apprentice, but with the Olympics on right now, I'm just not really focused on reading. I knew that would be the case. I love the Olympics. I dedicate most of my time to them whenever they are on, and so it is what it is at this point. I will yet again be reading Assassin's Apprentice into another week, but they only come every 4 years, so I gotta enjoy them while they last. So that is everything. Unfortunately, not a great reading vlog for me. One DNF, one very short book finish, which I didn't actually enjoy, and just a little bit more reading done into a book I've already read. So I will see you next week for another reading vlog. In my next video, I'm going to be doing a cozy reset and talking a little bit about the books I want to read in August. I hope you look forward to it, and I will see you then. Bye.